Hi, everyone. Welcome. My name is Olivia, and I'm a clinical counselor at Community Charter Elementary School.
Hi, everyone. My name is Maddie, and I'm a clinical counselor at the PUC Sylmar Complex.
And we are going to give a quick presentation on how to help when your siblings, when your children, your kids, won't stop fighting.
Okay, so here are some of our most important takeaways from this presentation. Number one, arguments should never turn physical between siblings. Anytime an argument starts to turn physical between siblings, an adult should be intervening, right? We need to keep kids safe. That's the number one most important thing. And intervene immediately, as I said, if children begin to fight aggressively with each other. Separate children into their own spaces if need be. Sometimes kids need some time to cool off, collect their thoughts, and they need to be separated for those moments. And finally, it's most important for you as a parent to keep your cool. Fire doesn't fight well with fire, right? We're just going to end up increasing our own levels of emotional dysregulation. We feel angry, we feel frustrated, right? Even if we feel all those things, as a parent, you still have to keep your cool, because if you start to rise in your levels of fire and aggression, your children are going to do the exact same thing. And then we discuss what happened once everyone has had their own time to cool down. So if you try and have an intelligent, calm conversation when everybody is still high in their emotions and feeling very reactive and very upset, it's not going to be a very productive conversation. So we're just going to wait until everybody has had some time and space to cool down, and then we can talk about it afterwards. So those are just some important takeaways, but we'll go into details in every single one during this presentation.
So fair isn't always fair. While it is important to treat children similarly, there are some exceptions to the rules. So number one, a child's age is going to be different with how you treat them. So you're not going to treat your 13-year-old like you would your 4-year-old and vice versa, nor should you. 13-year-olds will not act very nicely towards you if you treat them like a 4-year-old, because they are in fact 13 and know how to behave, or should know how to behave like a 13-year-old. Also to developmental age. So sometimes you could have a 4-year-old that's developmentally not at 4 years old, or a 13-year-old that's not developmentally at 13 and might be acting younger or older. So that's also a really important key to keep in mind for when treating children similarly or differently. Also physical abilities. So if you have a child that has different physical abilities or extra support, the way that you treat your children is going to look different based off of the child's physical abilities as well. Fair treatment doesn't always mean the same treatment. For example, with all of these three things included, you could still be fair and not treat them the exact same, because they're two different kids, two different ages, developmental ages, physical abilities. If gender plays a role in your family, gender differences as well. So these are definitely some important things to keep in mind for not treating children the same.
Okay. So avoiding negative comparisons. So it's really important for parents to avoid saying things like, you always get into trouble, or your sibling doesn't make bad decisions, right? It can be tempting to kind of compare our children in that way. But anytime you negatively compare siblings, this can lead to sibling resentment. So this can lead to the children in your family feeling as though they're resentful of their siblings. Oh, he always gets treated, better than I do, or you always blame me for the fight, right? You've probably heard something like that before. So if we can avoid making negative comparisons, or positive comparisons, really avoiding comparing our children at all, and just seeing them for the individual they are and what they might be experiencing in that present moment, you will probably have better relationships with the siblings, with each other, and with you, the parent, as well.
And also, Maddie, negative comparisons can lead to labeling. So when you're telling your child all the time, oh, well, you always make bad decisions and your sister doesn't, you're giving your child the label that they're the bad kid, or they make bad decisions. And so consequently, for further future situations, they're going to kind of subconsciously react that way in a way. So they're going in the back of their mind, they're going to be like, well, my mom thinks that I'm a bad kid, so I guess I have to act like a bad kid and not make the right decision. So it's really important when avoiding negative comparisons, because it also avoids negative labeling, which is not good for their self-esteem and development.
Yes. Thank you, Olivia. Absolutely.
Of course. So get to the cause of the problem. Talk calmly to your child about what led to the argument. A lot of times parents will be like, I don't care who started it. That doesn't help the situation, because your children aren't learning problem solving skills, nor are they feeling validated or heard, and you're not role modeling a positive communication style to them. So definitely talk to your children calmly about what led to the argument. And it also helps to determine the next step. So look for pattern behavior. If your children tend to fight over a particular toy, it's really important to encourage and model turn taking. So for example, you can set up a system for sharing, like using a timer. And then when the timer is set, then they have to kind of engage in that appropriate behavior of taking turns, communicating for what they'd like. You could do this when they're doing homework, if somebody needs an eraser. Look for kind of the triggers to the behavior, and then you'll be able to determine how to problem solve with your children about the behavior.
Okay. So establish household and family rules. So this is really important for any family, right, to have established rules and norms. So the children are aware of the household rules, the parents are aware, everyone knows what's going on. These rules should be age appropriate, right? So we're going to have different rules for a 6-year-old than a 16-year-old. And we want to be consistent with the rules. So the rules should be the same every day, right? So the kids can expect the same thing. We don't want to be changing it up on them, because that also produces anxiety. If the rule was different yesterday than it is today, how are they to be expected to follow it, right? So discuss with your partner or other caregivers so that you're on the same page. It's very important that parents are always on the same page with stuff, especially in front of the kids, right? So you can have your own discussion about, maybe I think the rule should be a little bit more lenient. Maybe I think this rule should be a little bit stricter. But in front of your child, always be on the same page. This also helps get rid of the good cop, bad cop stigma, right? Oh, well, I know mommy would let me do this, but, daddy wouldn't let me do this, right? So if you come as a united front, then the child has less of a chance of, labeling their parents in that way either. And it helps with consistency. Consistency is one of the things that children find most soothing. When there's stability, consistency in their life, they can navigate that life easier. They can explore, they feel safe, right? So consistency also helps children regulate their own feelings and emotions. So establishing rules and consequences. So consequences should never be more extreme than the rule. So if the rule is simple, the consequence should be simple. So an example of that is if you have 2 small children and, one of them maybe said something mean to the other, called them a name or something, right? The punishment shouldn't be, okay, well, you have no more TV for the rest of the month, right? That's a little extreme, right? We don't want to do name calling. That's maybe not very kind. But there could be a more appropriate consequence in place of, like, well, you hurt your sister's feelings, so, you're going to have to apologize, and, maybe we won't have extra TV time tonight, right? That would be an appropriate consequence for that rule. And also think about how to handle small disagreements and big fights. So how, as a family, do you handle disagreements? How do you handle disagreements between yourself and your partner? How do you model handling disagreements? So children are, always looking to their parents for modeling behavior. They're always looking to see what they should be doing. Even very small children are looking to you to see what they should be doing. So it's important to also, model how we handle disagreements, and then let the children work it out for themselves sometimes. Let them figure out how to resolve a disagreement between themselves. You don't always need to be in the middle of it, right? You can be kind of on the outside, gently reminding them of the rules of the house, and that they have the ability to work it out for themselves. You'll be surprised actually how easily children do this when given the opportunity, as long as you're role modeling first how we handle small disagreements in the house. Like I previously said, we break a small rule, and how we also handle big fights. Again, the exception, if there's ever any physical aggression within a fight between siblings, you want to intervene. That is when it is time for you as a parent to intervene, because it's now a safety issue.
So problem solving. How siblings resolve issues helps to build problem solving skills in the future. So if you're constantly jumping in to kind of be the referee and break up the fight, your child is not going to gain the skills that they need to properly problem solve with other people and use positive communication skills with other people. Also too, sometimes fights need to happen. And so think about like a boiling tea kettle. When the pressure builds, the steam has to release and the teapot screams, right? So within a family, not everything needs to be happy-go-lucky and kumbaya, and there will be tension at times. So it's definitely important to remember and to kind of calm yourself in the sense that like this argument needs to happen so that they can practice their problem-solving skills. Also, always wait until they have time to calm down in order to think reasonably. It's never a good idea to kind of intervene and be like, let's solve this case while everybody's heated, because that's where irrational thinking or unhelpful thinking can come into place, because we're all still thinking like, well, they hurt my feelings and that wasn't this. And it's definitely not going to be helpful when people are heightened. So we want to be able to give each child time alone separately to process their emotions, and then be able to regulate their bodily sensations too. So like when they're getting heated, it's definitely important to have that time to calm down and recenter yourself. If you're making the final decision, do not brainstorm with your children. So a lot of times it can be confusing for kids to see a parent or caregivers creating a solution in front of their children, because then it's kind of like you don't want the opposite team to know your plays. So it's the same thing. You kind of don't want your children to hear your brainstorming thought process, because it gives them the idea that they're involved in it. If you as a parent are making that final decision of no screen time, we don't get ice cream for dessert type of a thing, your children should not be in on the discussion, because it brings them up to the parental hierarchy that they don't need to be at. So for example, when you're done, you'll say something like, I've decided that neither of you will use the video game until we can find a way to stop the fighting. So one, this is able to create a boundary with you as a parent to say, I've made this decision as your parent. And two, it promotes and encourages their problem solving skills, because now they've both lost out on their video games. So that's definitely one really good takeaway that you can have from this, is to never deliberate about what the consequence is going to be or the solution is going to be in front of your kids. Encourage and model appropriate problem-solving skills. So for example, how can we work together to find a common solution? Another thing that we see a lot is when parents don't want to hear the arguing, like I had mentioned before, of like, okay, enough. It doesn't encourage communication or problem-solving skills. It invalidates feelings and it makes kids even more bothered. So definitely when we're in that moment, to go back to calming yourself first, because fire doesn't fight fire. And then kind of sitting down and asking a general statement, like how can we fix this problem? How can we work together to play the video game in a nice way? This will help to role model the behavior and also to teach the kids that communication is very effective when trying to get your point across.
So get them involved. As Olivia said, it's very important that children are involved in this process. You're modeling for them how to solve disagreements and fights. They're going to be using this throughout their entire lives. So the first step, ask children to say what they think the problem is. And what this does is it encourages children to see the other person's point of view, to see their sibling side of things. It encourages perspective taking, and this actually promotes empathy. So this is the ability for children to state their own opinion of what they think the problem is, and then hear maybe somebody else's perspective. Oh, interesting, my sibling sees it from this point of view, even though I see it from this point of view. And then the parent can kind of help them navigate the fact that it's okay that we have two very different perspectives of the problem. How are we going to work that out? So step two, ask both to share what they want to happen. So this also encourages children to use their own problem-solving skills. You know, if you were to solve the problem, what do you want to happen here? And when sharing ideas, make sure to not interrupt or give your opinion. This is your children's moment to share what they want to have happen. If you ask them, what do you want to have happen? Then you should not be inserting your own opinion into that conversation. It's important that they learn how to negotiate this on their own with guidance, but not interruption, right? So a parent should be taking the back seat in this conversation. And number 3, keep calm. So make sure all of your children are calm when they're trying to problem solve. Make sure that you are also calm when you help them problem solve. If everybody has their emotions very high, if we're all feeling really agitated and angry and frustrated still, it's not a good time to be problem solving. Maybe we need to take an extra 5 minutes and cool off, maybe go on a walk around the block for a minute. You know, that's okay if we need more time to cool off. We're not going to force it. We're not going to force everybody to feel better right away. The kids will feel better when they've had enough space and time to recover. And a friendly reminder is helpful if they start to get frustrated. So in the moment, if they feel those strong feelings start to come back, they start to get frustrated again, that's okay. Maybe as a group, we can just take some nice deep breaths together. Or, oh, do you feel frustrated? Do you need an extra few minutes to cool down? Or do you think you can be here and problem solve with us? Most of the time the kid will say, yeah, I'm okay, I can handle it. But if they do need an extra 2 minutes to sit by themselves and collect their thoughts, absolutely give them that space as well.
And another cool trick you could do with that, the friendly reminder, is to maybe come up with like a code name. So like monkey. Sometimes kids can experience even more added frustration or agitation when they're trying to calm themselves down. And then somebody's like, okay, are you ready? Are you calm? Oh, remember you're getting frustrated again. So it can definitely re-heighten them, especially when they're trying really hard to calm themselves down, to be recentered and be able to talk to you. So as a family, it would be really cool to like come up with a code name. So if you're noticing like, hey, Maddie, monkey, you're getting a little monkey right now. It's code for like, hey, we kind of need to like take another step back and calm ourselves down. We're getting a little frustrated again. So that is a really helpful trick that I've worked with some of my clients. It seems to really work for them. So definitely it depends on your family.
Thank you.
Okay, brainstorm. So this helps to build, my thing is blocking the way, I'm so sorry. This helps to build self-advocacy and team building skills. So a lot of times too, this is going to be a weird analogy, but in school you do projects together, right? And sometimes if you're not in a group that like you work well with, you can tend to feel agitated and frustrated and you're like, they're not listening to me. It's kind of the same thing with siblings. So it's really important to really encourage and practice brainstorming together so that it, one, helps with future communication styles or intrapersonal stuff. And then also too, to build self-advocacy. So when they're brainstorming, like, I don't really agree with that plan. I wonder if this could be helpful. That's a really good idea. Team building skills as well. So if Maddie gave me an idea and I was like, I kind of don't agree, but what if we do this instead? They're able to come to a compromise and really work well together and create their own solution so that you don't have to feel the need to jump in. It also helps to generate ideas for different scenarios. So especially if they've brainstormed something and let's say it worked in a different scenario over the video games and now they're fighting over like, I don't know, a pizza roll. Little different, but you get the idea. They can think back on past problem solving solutions and use it again. So it could be of like an IOU kind of a thing. So it's like, okay, well, remember the last time I got to pick the next video game? You can have the last Tostitos pizza roll if I get the next blah, blah, blah. Or kind of goes back to compromising, and then it helps them to also use past solutions in different scenarios in their time together. Also too, they're responsible for making the resolution and responsible for any consequences of not following the agreement. And this ties into like a contract. So if they really do well brainstorming together, a good idea is to add a contract for kids to understand the rules and agreements. And it's kind of like a chore list. If you have a chore list in your house, it's a reminder. The same thing. A contract is a written visual reminder. if you want, have a ball with it and like decorate it and be really cool with it, or keep it as simple as you want. But have also too, both kids sit down and brainstorm the ideas and write it down. Like, together we will play nicely, or we will use our words. When we get heated, we'll use our code name. And you'll write down all of your lists of rules and agreements and have all your kids sign it at the bottom. And then you can be like the co-signer. And then so that it's like a known agreement that you will all work together. Also too, the consequences. What are the consequences if you break a rule or an agreement? Is it going to be that you don't get the extra pizza roll, or you have to go be by yourself for 5 minutes, not in a timeout, but in a separation? This will also totally help to incorporate the brainstorming idea, working together, and following positive communication styles, which could be really cool.
And just to add one thing about the contract, this is also something that kids are very familiar with, because in a lot of elementary schools, they use this principle a lot. So there's a lot of classroom contracts that I've seen. Same thing, they have the rules and norms of the classroom, all the children sign it at the bottom, and the expectations are very clear if one of those rules are broken. So this should be an idea that your kids are relatively familiar with already. Maybe they've already done it at school. So it should be pretty easy to also move that to the home space as well.
Yes, thank you, Maddie.
So praising positive behavior. This is very important, right? So it's important to highlight positive interactions. And more than that, it's important to be very specific with our praise, right? So I really like how you're playing nicely together. Or you're doing a great job sharing that toy. Awesome communicating, right? It's important to praise our children when they do a good job, especially if it's something that they've previously been struggling with. It's really important to use that specific positive praise. If they weren't doing a good job sharing yesterday, and now you notice that they're sharing beautifully, definitely give them that positive praise. That deserves to be praised. This isn't something that they automatically know how to do. It's something that they've been working really hard at together. And if they're sharing very nicely together today, you can bet that's probably a little challenging for them given how the previous day went. And kids love to have your attention, and they feel better when that attention is for having been for receiving positive behavior. So anytime that you praise them for something, as I said, that was previously challenging for them, that feels good and it reinforces it. So positive behavior leads to more positive behavior. This is known as positive reinforcement. So it's great for children to learn for themselves. Okay, great. So when I behave in this way, I get along better with my sibling. My mom is telling me I'm doing a great job. My family seems to be getting along better all around, right? It leads to that sense of accomplishment and reward for them. Okay, I also can make a difference in my family system by doing my part. So definitely praising positive behavior is one of the most important takeaways from this.
So dealing with arguments between children, and specifically children with special needs. So planning, consistency, and positive praise are always going to be really important. Children with special needs, children in general, I'm not going to just be specific to special needs, children in general love structure. And so having a consistent plan is going to be really helpful so that every child knows what to expect from problem solving, from consequences, and from rewards. They're going to know what to expect, and it's not going to be like a pop-up surprise for them. It's also important to have an open conversation about a sibling's needs with his or her siblings. This goes back to fair but not same treatment. So children with special needs are going to require different circumstances or different treatment or support. So it's really important to have a conversation and be open-minded to receiving questions that your child without disabilities has about their sibling with special needs. It should be really important to be delivering this information in age-appropriate terms, so they don't need like the specific medical terms of what's going on, but just to be specific, to also provide information for what it might look like for Down syndromes, ADHD, autism, cerebral palsy, what those differences look like, and why you need to provide a different type of support or treatment. So for example, too, like if you have a child that needs assistance walking or using the restroom, or they might use a wheelchair, to explain to your children, you know how you can do this by yourself? Well, your brother needs help with this, and so that's why I'm here to help. It also could be really helpful to get them involved too. So one can help strengthen their communication, their bond, and also for them to actually really realize what it is that their sibling needs special accommodations for. This also goes to different accommodations for special needs. So while having different accommodations, it doesn't mean that your child with special needs should be treated any differently. If they break a contract, an agreement on the contract, they also have the same consequences. It doesn't mean that they can't get things taken away, or they don't get rewarded with that extra scoop of ice cream, or whatever the consequence may be. Your child should be treated the exact same way, with held up to the rules and expectations put forth as a family. But if it comes to certain chores, maybe adapt the chores a little bit differently for your child with special needs, so that way they also feel involved. Your child sees that they're involved, and it's not like two separate islands or entities in the family, that you guys are all coming together, working together. And continue to role play positive communication and taking turns. So you can explain in age-appropriate and developmentally appropriate ways to your children with special needs. For people who don't have a child with special needs, or have never worked with children with special needs, they think that they're not able to understand what we're saying, and they're 100% fully able to understand. It just depends on the way that we deliver that information. So we're not going to deliver it in like adult terms if they're not adults. We need to be age appropriate and specific and very direct with what we're explaining them. They're more than able to understand what we're saying to them. They're able to understand that they broke a consequence, or when they're being praised for really great behavior. Every children, no matter the special needs or disabilities, they're able to understand that. So definitely keep it consistent, and make it similar, if that makes sense, the similar treatment, and rules and expectations.
So calm yourself. This is one of the most important slides, right? Parenting is really hard work. Getting frustrated is normal when children begin to fight. It's okay that you might feel frustrated by that situation, but reacting in a frustrated or angry way doesn't really help. So if you notice your kids are fighting, you notice you might start to react, you start to have your anger raising, you start to get frustrated, find a way to recenter yourself. You don't need to interrupt every argument or disagreement. Maybe you need to go outside for a few minutes, let the kids sort it out for a minute, take a breath, just maybe go to the restroom, do something for yourself where you feel like you're able to get back to a centered place before you intervene, right? Also letting go of control. If you've modeled appropriate behavior for your kids, if you've done everything we've said in this presentation, they know the rules, they know the consequences, they're able to understand how to work things out for themselves. Maybe now is your time to take a step back, to let them figure it out for themselves, and to take a break if you need one, right? To just sit outside for a minute, get some fresh air, and then come check back and see if they've managed to work out their disagreement. Again, the exception is if there's ever any physical fighting, any physical aggression or hostility, then as a parent, you need to intervene for safety reasons. But if they're just working out, who gets to play the video game next, and they're just kind of verbally arguing with each other, give them a few minutes to see if they can sort it out, and then come check back once you've reached a level of calm and you no longer feel triggered by the situation.
So thank you guys so much again for joining. It's also too a really good reminder to have in yourself that it's going to be okay, and that children are going to have their moments. And your children might not get along with each other one day, and that is absolutely okay. As adults, we sometimes don't get along with other adults, and we don't beat ourselves up for it, and we kind of sit in our thoughts. So definitely to be kind to yourself and remind yourself that you're trying your hardest as a parent, especially during these times when everybody's cooped up. So definitely do something kind for yourself, and Maddie and I will stick around for any questions or comments that you guys have.
Great. Thank you guys for coming. Bye.